Kind of like how Khamzat Chimaev is like, I'm going to smash that guy, then this guy, then that guy, then this guy. And then I'm just going to smash them all again. What's going on, YouTube? Kevin Hoops here, bringing you guys another video. And today we are going to be mainly talking about Khamzat Chimaev. Now, he's going around saying, I'm going to smash this guy, I'm going to smash this guy, I'm going to smash that guy. I smash all of you guys. I'm not saying he's going to, but it has looked like he's been doing a lot of smashing and is going to continue doing that smashing in the near future. Now, currently, he's been fighting at 170 pounds, which is, I would say a pretty alright weight division. I know he missed weight a little bit by like 4 or 5 pounds, which really isn't a little bit. It's actually a good amount of weight to miss when it comes to fighting. And that might have a big factor in why he's starting to call out Alex Pereira, who, if you guys don't know, if you live under a fucking rock, is currently the welterweight champ at 185, who just beat Israel Adesanya. Me personally, I would definitely have that matchup in the UFC. Not only is Khamzat very hot right now, but Alex Pereira might not be in the UFC for long. I know he was talking about just fighting Israel Adesanya, and that's all he wanted to do. I would like to see more of him in the UFC, more than just that one fight at least. And I'm assuming that they're going to be rematching Izzy and Alex Pereira first. I would assume that they would do that. I heard that there was some talks about that fight happening in March of next year. I'm not behind the fucking board of the UFC in the war room picking fights, so I can't tell you exactly what's going to happen. But I can come up with a lot of the stuff that I think is more likely to happen. And I really don't think the Alex Pereira one is at least on the horizon. It might happen later next year. It might happen who knows when in the future. But I really think that Alex Pereira versus Israel Adesanya matchup is going to happen first before anything with Alex Pereira and Khamzat. Moving on to fighter number 2, we've got Colby Covington, and this is where things get interesting. I believe, and if we stay at 170, where I think Khamzat is probably going to stay, I think that there's definitely a lot more contenders that might be a very more well matchup compared to Alex Pereira, because he has more of that kickboxing background and not a lot of wrestling. We saw that against Israel Adesanya. His fucking grappling was ass. And that's where I think Colby Covington can really bring a more of a fair chance to win against Khamzat, because of that wrestling background. I believe it was D1 wrestling. It might have been D2. You can fact check me on that. I really don't give a shit. But either way, he's an All-American top-tier wrestler at the end of the day and can probably show a lot more grappling defense. Maybe better than Kevin Holland did in that last fight, because Kevin Holland did not show any grappling defense. And I know Gilbert Burns did show a good amount of grappling defense in their past fight. And honestly, I think that was a better matchup for Khamzat Chimaev compared to Kevin Holland. You have Gilbert Burns, who definitely has more of that jiu-jitsu background, and I think was a little bit of a wake-up for Khamzat, and he may have not been fully woken up, because I think that fight was a lot more closer than a lot of people were expecting. I think a lot of people were expecting Khamzat to come into that fight and absolutely annihilate him. And it's not what happened. I think Gilbert Burns definitely lost the fight. I'm not saying that, the decision was bad, but I'm saying Gilbert Burns definitely put his heart on the line and definitely gave all that he had in that fight and showed that he wasn't the better fighter, but still is at that top tier where Khamzat might be a tier that we might not even have seen yet. That's a thing that I'm thinking about, where it's hard to compare fighters here, because Khamzat is basically a fighter that we've never seen. This dude's calling out people in other divisions without even having a belt, but at the same time, he's 12-0, and I don't think a lot of people are calling him out personally. I know that there was that one instance with Khabib's camp, but I don't think that was necessarily calling anyone out. It was probably just a miscommunication when it came down to it. But anyways, moving on to fighter number 3, I have Jorge Masvidal down in the 170 division. Now, Jorge Masvidal has been out of the conversation lately just because he's not been fighting in general. I don't think we've seen him fight once this year. If we did, it was in the beginning of the year, and he lost. His last 3 fights just haven't, I think, been exactly what we've expected as a Jorge Masvidal fan, as a game-bred fan. I think a lot of us were expecting him to have this streets mentality, this kind of Nate Diaz mentality of never giving up. And I'm not saying he gives up, but what I'm saying is he's talked the talk and has not backed it up, and hasn't backed it up necessarily to the point where Nate Diaz can back it up. He will not lose until it goes to a decision. Anyways, I think Jorge Masvidal tries to have that persona and has, he's gotten knocked out. He's lost a good amount of times in the UFC at least. I do believe that he brought a different mentality in that 2018-2019 run. I think he was very dialed in and very technical of the type of decisions that he made. Maybe not necessarily in the fights themselves, but I think the fights he took and the decisions he made were very technical and very smart when it comes to business. I don't necessarily think Jorge Masvidal is at the top of the list to fight Khamzat, but I do see his name coming back in. I know he's throwing some names around, talking about fighting again and coming back to the UFC. Not saying that he left the UFC, but he hasn't been fighting this whole entire year, and it's not like he ever got the belt, so I don't know necessarily what he's making money off of right now. I'm sure it's some business, but I personally don't know. And someone that actually might be at the top of that list and is actually ranked right under him, and I think is an underrated fight that is more likely going to happen than maybe any of these. I think the top two we have that are probably going to happen are Colby Covington, and the next one I'm about to say is Belal Muhammad. Now, Belal Muhammad has been proving himself again and again and again, and especially in his last fight. His last fight was against Sean Brady, and some people might not know him, but I especially know him because he's from Philly and he's got that Philly mentality. But absolutely wiped the mat with Sean Brady, who I think a lot of people actually thought was a really big up and coming fighter. And maybe he just didn't have the experience underneath his belt yet, but really showed that Belal Muhammad definitely has the grappling and striking experience. He kept Sean Brady on his feet and just completely outstruck him. So I think that shows that Belal Muhammad has that grappling defense to keep the fight on your feet, so then he's not going to go into somewhere on the ground where he might not be as experienced as his opponent. Another reason I think that Belal Muhammad and Colby Covington are probably the top two guys to probably face Khamzat next is because you've got Kamaru Usman ranked number 1 with Leon Edwards as the champ. Then underneath that, and that's probably the next fight you're going to see with those two. So you're probably not going to see the title in the next 3, 4 months, 5 months. And you're not going to see Kamaru Usman for the next 4 or 5 months because they're going to be in training camps and preparing for that. Then you have Colby Covington number 2, Khamzat number 3, and Belal Muhammad number 4. Belal Muhammad just won. Colby Covington hasn't fought in a while, and Khamzat Chimaev is trying to smash everyone in the division. So you guys look at it from that perspective. I think you've got Colby Covington or Belal Muhammad as the next fights for the UFC. It's definitely fun to entertain the Alex Pereira. Maybe he would fight him, maybe not. And maybe the Jorge Masvidal one. But again, with the 3-fight losing streak, I really doubt that they're going to throw him to a fucking beast like Khamzat, especially if Jorge Masvidal isn't going to take that fight because he knows he's probably going to lose. And there's also an age difference there. I know Khamzat's very up and coming. Jorge Masvidal has been in the game for a long time. So it really could go either way when it comes to who he would fight next. And again, my money is on Belal Muhammad or Colby Covington. And if I were to pick one, it would probably be Colby Covington just because that's the top 2 guys. And then you can plan that out. So whoever wins the Leon Edwards versus Usman, that person becomes title. Whoever wins Colby Covington versus Khamzat Chimaev then fights for the title on whoever won Usman Edwards. And I believe that's probably what we'll see the whole entire next year, at least for the first half of the year, with the welterweight title. That's probably the next couple fights we'll see at the top of the division. Everyone under that top level tier is still a real big killer in that division. Like, you've got Gilbert Burns, Jorge Masvidal, Stephen Thompson. The welterweight division is always stacked with killers. So I think no matter what fight we're going to see, it's probably going to be against someone that's really up there and has a really good skill level with grappling or with striking. So that's kind of the gist of what I'm going to be seeing next for Khamzat Chimaev, at least me personally, in my opinions of who's at the top right now and who's going to be fighting soon. And when it comes to maybe 2 years down the line, or what Khamzat has got on the horizon, maybe a little bit after he attains the belt, if he does, is possibly going up and fighting that for that middleweight belt. Right now it's Alex Pereira. That's who he's calling out now. But in my opinion, I think Israel Adesanya is probably going to get the belt back. And if it goes to a trilogy fight after that, then I'd still have my money on Israel Adesanya to keep the belt and stay the champ of that division. if that happens, and let's say Khamzat attains the belt at welterweight, then I think you're going to see a champ versus champ. You know, Israel Adesanya went up in weight. Maybe he goes down in weight. Maybe Khamzat goes up in weight and meets him at middleweight. Who knows what the possibilities are? But maybe you see Israel Adesanya versus Khamzat Chimaev, belt for belt. You know, two champions going at it head to head. I think it's definitely going to be entertaining to see what happens in, a year or 2 years from now with these fighters, especially with these next couple fights that you're probably going to see in these divisions. With that, ladies and gentlemen, that is all I have for the little fight predictions I have for Khamzat Chimaev. Really just looking at it from pencil and paper and, doing some far-fetched, what if this happens and then maybe that happens. Kind of like how Khamzat Chimaev is like, I'm going to smash that guy, then this guy, then that guy, then this guy. And then I'm just going to smash them all again. So who knows what we're going to see from Khamzat Chimaev. I really think he just wants to fight everybody in the fucking UFC, not just in his weight division. It's just anyone on the roster it has the possibility of fighting this guy, basically, because he's calling out everybody in every weight division, which I think is entertaining. It's something that's got my attention. So if it does, let me know. If it's got your attention, let me know in the comments. Let me know which fight you think is more likely to happen with Khamzat Chimaev. It definitely, I think, has a high probability, again, to be that Colby Covington below Muhammad. Let me know if you think that's what it is. If not, it's all right. We're going to disagree, and we disagree. But with that, have a great motherfucking day, ladies and gents.